Good
Evening.
evening.
I think you've probably hit the nail on the head in terms of the games that work. So the Lego games work. Um, I think principally because they keep it into that kind of fantasy fun side of things, and there's that kind of whole Lego element, and they work fine. Arkham Knight kind of trilogy, I think, has been terrific. I haven't seen the newest game. I haven't had any dealings with the new game yet, unfortunately. But in terms of the kind of, I think it was Arkham City was the last game that I played in the trilogy, and I just thought it was a terrific movie. I think the good superhero games exploit the vulnerabilities of the superheroes. And I think for me, the games where the superheroes are effectively invulnerable or are going to be, they're going to overcome the problems without any application of skill. Where's the challenge in that? And that's where I think the challenge is in making a good superhero game. And I think where Lego gets it right because it's got its fun, and the rock is it Rockstar
Yeah.
who Rocksteady who did the Arkham Knight stuff have got it right because there is definite vulnerability in Batman, and the game's challenging and difficult, and it's not a question of, oh, do you know what, I'll just go to something else on my utility belt and that'll be that. There are kind of genuine, real tough challenges to do. Plus, I think they've also got one of the best combat systems I think in any game in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, particularly in the hand-to-hand side. But that would be my kind of initial take on it.
I'm actually playing Arkham Knight at the minute, and the guy who was doing the script for the last two Arkham Asylum and City games, Paul Dini, actually didn't come along for this game. Now, they actually used their in-house writers to do the script, and I actually think the story's slightly weaker for it, because he isn't on board as such. But like, I love my superhero games, and the only good thing about Batman and that is everybody can relate because he's an average Joe with loads and loads of money. He doesn't actually have superpowers as such. I think that's why everybody loves Batman. Um, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I like the superhero games. I love Batman. I love the Batman games. I just don't like the superhero movies at the moment.
Okay.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
No,
Yeah, I mean, I played a bit of the demo for the Marvel Lego game, and I thought it looked really good. And you had to flip between the different characters because they had their own, defined powers or abilities, and in that underlying logic that you have with the Lego games, where um, if you want to jump, only certain characters can jump and reach the thing that you're trying to reach, so you kind of have to kind of flip it around. And I think it worked reasonably well in the Marvel game. I was trying to think what I've played out with Batman, and I recall playing a Superman game on the 360, and it was okay, but it kind of felt like a series of, "Oh, this is happening, go and fix it," and there's no character development because he's Superman and he's invulnerable. So you basically run around and you either do the super breath or the laser eyes or the super strength or something, and it essentially becomes, if you like, a 3D platformer with some puzzling involved. And the game was okay, but nothing more than okay. And for me, I think that's part of the difficulty in making a really good game. Part of what I think, if you want to take the analogy, if you were to say, for example, that the Master Chief in Halo is a superhero, if you were to take the analogy there and say, in Halo 4, you kind of see vulnerabilities in the Chief in terms of the character and the emotional responses. And I thought that that was a real step forward in terms of the game's playability. Not that people don't like the running around and shooting stuff that comes with Halo, but the scenes, particularly with Cortana in 4, where you kind of see I feel like a vulnerability in the Chief, I think made, from my perspective, a more complete and more rounded character.
Well, I don't know. I like the Lego games because of the comedy and what's the point in playing a character if he can't die and you've got to overcome a challenge. So yeah, well, there's no challenge in a game if you could. It's like using cheats. What's the point in putting a cheat in that makes you never be able to die? The game's boring.
That's a really good analogy, I think, Rhiannon, because effectively superheroes are cheaters in the gaming space because they can do whatever they want to make it happen. So I think that's quite a good analogy.
Well, it's in the Lego Marvel game, which I love. Unless you buy the red brick for invulnerability, every character can, well, you've got 4 hearts. If you get hit, they do die and you lose coins or whatever they're called, studs. So that's the point of the game. Don't die. So why make a game where the character never dies? You get bored.
Um, well, if you take, yeah, um, if you take, for example, the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction game that came out in PS2, I forget the exact year, but it was just purely about destroying everything and anything in your path. Like the story in that wasn't good, but I did enjoy that quite a lot compared to, say, the most recent Spider-Man games that are out at the minute. Amazing Spider-Man 2, graphically and even story and gameplay, it was terrible. It was one of the worst games I've ever played. Um, I think Rhiannon probably would agree.
Yeah, definitely awful.
But yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 2 got slated, and it had potential to be a great game, but they didn't utilize the engine properly, and could have done so much more than what they did with it.
I'm not sure longevity is the key thing here. I think if you're talking about fun, I think fun is absolutely critical to the kind of Lego games.
Yeah.
So the Lego games work because of the sense of humor, I think.
I agree.
You mean what you want from a Lego game with Batman is you want to kind of throw the Batarang around and you kind of want to do the gliding stuff, but you also want to see if you like, the characteristic Lego moments of comedy where you just sit there and you do the laughing out loud because it is just so brilliantly done. The comedy's so well taken.
Yeah.
So I think it's key. On the other hand, the Arkham games probably benefit from the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. Because effectively, I think what you get is spin-off's not necessarily the right idea. I think the Nolan movies kind of made Batman very cool and very current again, and therefore it was absolutely ripe for a good game. And so effectively, if you buy into the premise that Batman is this tortured soul trying to revenge the death of his parents or the murder of his parents by defeating all criminals and defending Gotham, then I think that's your investment in the character. Kind of maybe drifting slightly off topic, but I don't know how many of you guys have spent any time watching Gotham, the series, which is and I just think what they're doing is they're completely setting up the characters as real, believable, three-dimensional people, and then so what you don't just get is suddenly, Catwoman. There's an arc that says this is how that she became that person. So Selina Kyle isn't just I mean for all that you've got to love Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman in the kind of previous trilogy of movies, kind of being killed and then licked back to death by the cats was just kind of a bit weird. Whereas at least there's a realistic, if you like, bent towards how the if you like Gotham is explaining how Selina Kyle came to be, and so I think some games can play on the other elements of fandom. So whether that's TV shows, whether it's movies or the comic books themselves, then there's an element of setup, and it means that what you don't have to do is spend forever trying to figure out who this character is and what their motivation is and so on. It's Batman. We know what Batman's about. And so your investment is there. If you've bought a Batman game, it's because you like Batman. I would suggest, if you don't like Batman, I don't think it's a likely purchase. The fact that it's done really well, I think, is an absolute tribute to kind of what the developers have done with that, and I think they have been some of the best games that we've seen in the last 3 to 5 years.
I think the Batman games, not the Lego ones, they rely on the legend from Adam West onwards. Mm-hmm. That's how they're successful. They don't have that much comedy in, except for the Joker, but the Joker's awesome anyway.
Yeah, and so I suppose the underlying assumption is that Batman's doing what he's doing because he's trying to seek revenge for the loss of his parents. That's his motivation. Go. I don't suppose you need much more than that for Batman. But I don't know what you guys think. Okay.
Yep. I will say that the story-wise, Arkham Knight isn't as good, but gameplay-wise, it's exactly like any of the other Arkham games. You have that invulnerability, except you've got now a tank, which can crash through anything and everything, which is quite fun to do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And West, I love that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Mhm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The, yeah. Yeah. The thing is with Superman though, he's really hard to put into video game format because of the whole him being indestructible, pretty much with like kryptonite. But I've heard rumors that Rocksteady may tackle either Justice League or Superman as their next game project because there's loads and loads of Easter eggs to do with Lex Luthor in Arkham Knight. Um, if you even watch the trailers and that, you'll see some. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yes, it is.
I'm looking forward to that film.
Um, the Martian Manhunter, his alter ego, is actually in Arkham Knight in the Gotham PD place. Yep, yep, he's in it. Uh, yeah, he's in it, and he has a few lines, but like he's not actually Martian Man or just John Jones. It's like a nod, you know. So that's why it makes me think they're aiming towards more a Justice League game.
Well, I mean, we've got Batman versus Superman coming up
Yep.
next year. And I think there'll be a game tie-in with that beyond any doubt. Whether it's a decent game or not is an entirely different question. Um, uh, I kind of, I'm, we're at a level of knowledge of some of the comic lore that I think goes beyond um, people like myself who are probably a bit more casual in terms of kind of their understanding of stuff. I'd never heard of Iron Man before, kind of seeing the movies and stuff like that. So, for me, there's a degree of, if you will, learning associated with the movies. But you look at the number of movies, for example, that Marvel's done. Um, all those movies, you've got what, three Iron Man movies, you've got two Thor movies, you've had two or three Avengers movies? Three Avengers movies now?
Three
Can
now.
anybody,
Two, two.
Captain America.
Um, And ask yourself this: what's been the good game out of all those movies? That's been the tie-in.
Lego Marvel.
Lego Marvel, absolutely.
Yes.
That's the game, and it's like, and so I think what that probably alludes to is what we've been talking about. Is like, how do you make a decent game about superheroes if you can't invest in the characters because the characters are essentially invulnerable?
Yeah.
Give it to Lego.
But how many movie tie-in games can you name that are actually decent?
Oh, that's a very good question, and it's a much broader question, I think, Dan. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say that what you've got is a linear experience. If the game replicates the experience of the movie, there is only one successful way to navigate that, and there's only one successful outcome. So you already know what you need to do to be successful in the game. Where's the challenge? Other than that, it effectively becomes a platformer. You know, it's jump at the right place, fire the right button. You know, do those kind of things. It's not. There's no intellectual challenge. And you know, all the, if you like, the work that's done in terms of the characters has been done by the movie. So typically, developers don't bother any character development in the game. So the games become, if you will, I think you're right to say this, Ricky. The games are lazy because they are effectively they're predestined. You can navigate your way through them. There's nothing to be done in terms of characters because, hey, we've had actors do that very successfully. So why would you bother doing that? So I think movie tie-ins, as a rule, are generally pretty terrible. Really pretty terrible. Do I need to say Colonial Marines to anybody? No. No. You know, yes. but you know, it's like, oh, do you know, where's the challenge? Where is this different? And I think the beauty for me of when you get into kind of major kind of franchise games where you're talking about things like Mass Effect, where, you know, genuinely different choices resulted in different outcomes. You had character development, you had emotional investment, and those games are more complete, I think, as a consequence. Whereas movie tie-ins are effectively just, hey, come and press these buttons in the right sequence and you'll replicate the experience of the movie. And it's just a bit rubbish.
Yep.
I don't know. I got bored. I grew out of, superheroes, and then they started making everything CGI. They don't use real people anymore, or real animatronics. I just got bored of it. Yeah, I mean, I get, they can't obviously do them flying and all that kind of thing, but, it's boring. I was dragged to, what was it, Captain America, with Ice Man or something like that, I don't know. That's it. I went to that, I was dragged to that, and then there was this whole sequence, and it was all CGI, even the people were CGI. I was like, well, why have any actors in it if you're not going to have them in the film?
So, I think I understand that. I think the first Captain America movie was much the better for being very much a kind of, I feel like, a physical movie. It was very much more about character, establishing the universe, introducing people. There was obviously a lot of digital work in it as well, but I think it worked pretty well as a movie. My wife, who went to see that movie with me and my son, enjoyed it, and she's not into comic books or superheroes or that kind of stuff at all. But she thought that was a decent movie. I don't know how that plays back to Winter Soldier or what have you. Pretty disappointing when you think you get Robert Redford in a movie and it's a bit meh.
I just don't like him anymore. I got bored of it.
Mm.
There's no story. There's just this happens. Or they have a little argument in the middle. They get over the argument and then they win. At the end of the day, that's it. That's the whole thing. Every single superhero, it's boring.
I would have to disagree slightly. Not every superhero movie has loads and loads of CGI. Take, for example, Batman. trilogy, Christopher Nolan, he hates CGI. Inception was a good example of
Oh, I
a
love
movie
that.
that
That
has
was great.
hardly any CGI in it, apart from the obvious few scenes that need it. Um, but yeah, the likes of Deadpool and that, I don't think have a lot of CGI either. I watched the trailer there about 10 minutes before we started this podcast, and I must say I'm really impressed with Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. He wasn't so good in X-Men whenever he was in it, but I think he's a good choice for that movie.
Fine.
See,
So,
sorry, on you go, Rihanna. On you go.
I was just gonna say, I only a few weeks ago I gave into like peer pressure and watched the first Avengers film, and I was like, wow, this is boring. This is like the same film I've seen from Spider-Man, the X-Men films. They seem all the same to me, and I got really bored of it.
I think the Avengers and the Marvel stuff generally is kind of running the risk of superhero fatigue. There's just too many of them,
yes.
and there will
Yep.
be movie after movie after movie. You know, I just worry and I wonder that kind of where they're going to go with this stuff. I mean, there are good superhero movies to be made, and you know, let's talk about why isn't there going to be a Black Widow movie? Isn't that an amazing opportunity to explore a character and understand that? But apparently nobody's interested in that. People have been trying to get a Wonder Woman movie going for goodness knows how long, and apparently nobody's going to go and watch a girl for goodness sake, you know, which appears to be the logic. I'm kind of, I do wonder where they are going with all of this in terms of the movies, and there's kind of a movie. There's at least one every year. We're kind of needing to strike out in a different direction, because otherwise it's just you're kind of reheating the same things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, see, that's good, because I think one of the things that I think the superhero genre in general flirts with and sometimes doesn't do very well with is it can be a bit kind of very sexist and a bit misogynist in terms of kind of how it all plays, because the female characters are all like incredibly curvaceous because that's how they like to draw them, and you know they kind of seem to have very two-dimensional roles in the films that they're in. And I would just like to see something done a little bit more challenging, a little bit more interesting with the characters, that are, there's nothing wrong with kind of good, strong male leads, but we need good, strong female leads as well. And I think if we talk about the Nolan movies, I think by having Anne Hathaway in as Catwoman, I thought that was a really interesting piece of casting, because there's a really good actor in a role and did something a little bit different with it. And I thought that was interesting. I think that made it much more watchable as a consequence.
I can only think of one superhero woman, well, not superhero woman, who was the sole focus. It's not a film, it was a TV series. Made basically empowered women, and that was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That is the last example of a strong female character I can think of, except for Alien Ripley. But that's it. That's all we have.
I can think of a few. For example, in the last Avengers movie, they focused a lot on Black Widow, quite a bit.
She's really needy to me.
But that's a good example. They're heading in the right direction, I think, with that character. I would love to see her in a solo movie. But you've also got Agent Carter and
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's mostly in the Marvel side, really, that they have female characters. But I can't wait to see what they do with Wonder Woman. I'm really, really excited for
sure.
Man of Steel 2. But I think there are far too many superheroes in it.
I think the Agent Carter thing is really, really good. One, I think Hayley Atwell is just an excellent actor. I think she's
Yeah,
just terrific, really, really good. They've commissioned, I think, a second season of that, and
they have, yeah.
we're about to get the first season in the UK on Fox, and I'm really looking forward to it
Hmm.
because, from what I can gather, the shows have been good. You know, and it's not
Hmm.
just a question of a bit of window dressing. Hey, let's just see how much more money we can milk out of
Yeah,
these characters. There seems to be genuine interest in making Peggy Carter an interesting proposition, interesting show.
yeah,
You know, so I think, you know, Agent Carter, absolutely, that's a good example. But
yes,
you are back to Buffy, Xena, dare I say?
Xena.
You
yes,
know,
and
you know,
I miss Xena. That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Agent, Agents of Shield.
There's a lot to like about Agents of Shield,
Yeah.
but your principal character there is, of course, um, it's a man. You know,
Well,
and yes, yeah, there are strong female characters in that,
yeah,
but I think they're essentially all bit players.
I would disagree. I think the main woman in it, the name I'll come to in a minute. She's an Inhuman now. She didn't have a big part as such in the first
Sky,
chase,
you
but
talking about?
Sky, yes,
Yeah,
Agent Sky. She is now. They're focusing really on her in season two, compared to season one. About where she came from and her parents and that. Um, there is a good example of a strong female lead in my eyes. And
she's strong. I mean, there is so much more I think they could do with, like, for example, Melinda May in that show.
yes,
You know, if you're looking for a complete badass female lead, then there's Melinda May. There are good female characters, but it's all centered around Phil Coulson. It's the Phil
yeah,
Coulson show and other people. So for all that there are good female characters in it, um, and you can kind of have the conversation about kind of where they've gone in season two relative to the first season, where I thought it actually was on a pretty strong piece. If you look at kind of there are a good selection of characters there. There's also, thankfully, good to see strong ethnically diverse characters. You know, these from Asian background. You've got guys like Trip, as you know, you've got strong Black Americans
yes,
actors as well. But I still think it's the Phil Coulson show, and it's about a white middle-aged man running a team of people to go and do stuff.
hmm,
Whereas Buffy was only ever about Buffy and the people around her, and Xena was about Xena. So for me, I think, you know, I don't want to go all the way back to you know, Wonder Woman the TV show um, with Linda Carter, which I absolutely loved.
I
I
never
thought it
watched
was.
those two.
You know, I thought, you know, good show.
That was before my time.
And before digital effects, so you know they did a pretty nice job with it. But you know, we are struggling for strong female protagonists
Yeah, it is a
leading
bit.
shows and leading movies, and I think that's probably, out of everything that's going on in the movies and the TV shows, that's an area where I think the studios need to take a long good look, because I think if they came we maybe need to give Agent Carter a bit more room to breathe, a bit more time to see where they go with that. But at the moment, everything else is it's male centered, and I think that's probably quite disappointing.
The same can be said for the gaming characters, though. I can't think of many female lead characters in games. I mean, all the games I play as a male, except for Skyrim, where I can change it to a female.
You've so yeah, Lara Croft probably absolutely. And in Mass Effect, you can play Shepard as a female character as a choice. And actually, personally speaking, I think Fem Shep is the more interesting character. And you do, having played through the trilogy, both as a male and a female character, and I think Fem Shep gives you the more interesting experience. But that's just a personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I I would maybe suggest that the interaction between Banner and Black Widow was more about, I don't saw it necessarily as a physical attraction, but as an emotional one. And I think what you saw was particularly when it was Black Widow who was the one who would bring the Hulk back to Bruce Banner through that kind of conversation piece. There was definitely a tangible connection between the two of them. And there was a sense of, for me, could we have a life out with being these people that we are, which is, I'm going to be defined by the big guy, or, I'm going to run around in tight-fitting black leather for the rest of my days. And there was a sense of there's something more than this there, rather than necessarily a kind of a sexual chemistry. But that's how I interpreted it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think they're just purely to say, oh, we're not all about guys in superhero movies, but then they just play as the sex symbol. lot from it when I
I
watched
think
it.
I think the Hawkeye movie that they're going to make will delve into Natasha Romanoff's history of like she's got um, red on her ledger as Loki had said in the first Avengers, and it'll probably tell the audience, so they'll probably explain why and how and what happened with her and how she became what she was. Her
So
whole history.
there was an element of that shown in the most recent Avengers movie. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, there was a lot there where you're saying, oh my gosh, that explains such a lot about why she is so emotionally unavailable, that she appears cold and very calculating. There are things there that you can understand. But,
Yeah.
you know, she's been playing that character for how many movies now? You know, they just,
Yeah.
I think we need to take the character in a different direction, or else it's just more of the same. As for a Hawkeye movie, it's a guy with bow and arrow. You know, where are we going with that? What's that going to be about?
Might as well just bring back Robin Hood.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know.
interesting.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Speaking about Arrow, I've heard rumors they're actually going to rename that show Green Arrow, because on Steve Amell's Facebook page, he posted a picture of him in a new Arrow suit. Yep. I'm actually looking at it right now, and it's got like shoulder pads, like hockey pads. It looks a whole lot. It looks very padded. I'm gonna say I like it, and it's gonna be like what Arrow should be. The Green Arrow should be, in my opinion. Yep, it is. It is indeed. That's a show I love. Yes. I would no, I don't. The Justice League movies and the TV series are completely different universes, so they are. But I'd love to see a Justice League TV show. Or how it would work, I don't know. Yes.
Oh, I love
Yes.
Harley Quinn.
See, for all that I like, Harley Quinn is kind of visually very arresting, and the problem is I've only ever really seen it portrayed in the comic books as a bit of a ditzy kind of female running around chasing after the Joker. I don't know how attractive or interesting as a character that is. I don't know whether it's because I don't understand the backstory, or whether that's going to get that's something that's going to be kind of brought into it or whatever. I mean, certainly, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
In the Arkham game, she's actually very smart. In the end of Arkham City, they released a DLC called Harley Quinn's Revenge, and she was very good in it. I loved that DLC. That was done very well, even though it was very short.
I haven't seen that, so I'll defer to you on that one, Dan. I just think, that one of the challenges is going to be is, and let's bring in another thread here, is that you see so many people cosplay as Harley Quinn. just because it's got such an iconic look. How do you then bring that into an interesting three-dimensional character who's going to do that? So I think there's some challenges there, particularly if you're trying to bring in an audience that maybe doesn't know or understand the background that well. But this is not to say it's not beyond what's there, but Suicide Squad kind of seems to me a bit like, here, let's just get another ensemble of a lot of characters that some people will know and some people will get introduced to, and we'll throw a lot of money at it, and it'll be next year's summer blockbuster. Although I don't know which of the Marvel movies that's going to be going head to head with. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you know the thing about Catwoman in Arkham City is you get to do one of the things that you think Catwoman might actually do, which is to kind of walk out and leave Batman to die, and they'll let you do that. And I thought it was just absolutely brilliant. And then the game rewinds and you go back and it's like, okay, I have to do that. I have to go rescue him now. But I love the fact that it let you just kind of go and do something that was so left field that it would be like, oh my God, you're really going to do this? But I think, if you're in terms of games, I still think there's a lot more could be done in terms of getting into the character. I think Arkham mostly focuses on story and action, and I think that's fine. It's a very fine formula and it works really, really well. But if we're looking for that from a game perspective, I don't think we've seen a superhero game where we've had anything worthwhile in terms of character development. But that's kind of where I think we are with that, is that almost with the superhero movies, superhero games, I beg your pardon, what you seem to be is like, okay, you know who these guys are, so we don't need to invest any time whatsoever in telling you about them. Whereas actually that might be quite good to know and understand. In the movies, I think if you get good characters in a good script, a la Anne Hathaway in Nolan's third one of the Batman trilogy, then you get something. You get something really, really interesting. And there was a genuine sort of tension and a real sense of the Catwoman character being very conflicted and kind of struggling with what they're doing in the way that I think the comic books have always tried to show, that it wasn't just, it's not black and white. There's very much shades of grey in there. And that's much, much more interesting.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. How? Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. But how many? Yeah. Yes.
I
Mhm.
think I I think yes. Oops, sorry about the creaky chair there. I was going to say, Ricky, I think that in Gotham, the TV show, you can see that at its embryonic stage, the kind of the tension between the two characters, the undoubted attraction, but the kind of whole sense of Bruce still
Mhm.
trying to figure out who he is, what he's about, and what's happening. Although,
Yeah.
on a completely different note, what a brilliant finish to the series they did. I thought
Yeah.
it was like, whoa, yes, fantastic, and good to know that they've been commissioned for a second season, and they.
Mhm.
I think Gotham has been an absolute joy in terms of, here's a show, it's a superhero show, yeah. But do you know what? They're
Mhm.
doing it in a really, really interesting way. Um, in a lot of ways, it's not about Bruce Wayne, it's the Jim Gordon show, really.
Yeah.
It's almost. I think one of the areas where the show is still trying to figure itself out is, when they get into. I'd like to see them do more what you would maybe call police procedural, because we kind of seem to not do very much detective work. Things seem to kind of fall into their lap, and then it's boom, right, off we go, and we'll do the fighty bit. I wouldn't mind seeing them do a bit more legwork on some of these things, but I think they're still trying to find the kind of the tempo and pace for the show that way.
Mm. Yeah. Um. Mhm. They needed to be. Mhm. Yeah. That. Yeah. But
I think when Gotham comes back to us, I'm guessing it'll be probably either very much later this year, or the beginning of next year when we've got that. That's a whole other podcast, I think.
Can I just say something about Gotham? And it's really bothering me about the show. They're showing like the Black Mask, and Scarecrow and all that as grown men. In the comics, they're grown men, but so is Batman. So does that mean that whenever Bruce Wayne is old enough, will they be old men? They've completely messed the timeline up. They have.
It's the sun, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but
Is his son?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes.
Take, for
Yes.
example, Penguin.
Yes, that's true.
Tony, the gangsters, they're all older. That's my point. Yeah. Yeah, but they have messed some of the timeline up, is what I'm saying. Like, I think. Yeah.
And
I just think some of the.
Some of the characters, I think there's been villains that have been in for like a single episode and then they're gone, and it's like, do you know what? If you're going to start burning some of the story opportunities on a single episode, you know, how's that going to play out? How is that going to play out? And I think there's, you know, I think they need to kind of rein themselves in a little bit and try and figure out how do you work in those recurring characters.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to commend Gotham. Very much a lot to commend Gotham.
Don't get me wrong, it's a great show. It's just I think some of the things they could have done slightly better. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they completely missed that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the sushi Jason Todd. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Sure.
Could be more, yeah. But there is a new game with a super heroine coming out from the same guys that did It's about robot dinosaurs and that, and it's kind of like
Oh, that looks awesome.
yeah, yes, that's the one.
And you've also got to keep an eye on Recore as a 2016 title, where it's a female protagonist there. Sure. So all I know is what I've seen in the, I guess what would have been the E3 presentation about Recore, and it's a game that has a young woman. I would have said she was not much more than a girl, so maybe in her late teens, early 20s. On a planetary surface, it looks like a desert. She's got something that is awfully reminiscent of Dog from the Half-Life games, and seems to be powered or have control from a glowing globe within it. There's then a bit of a conflict, and the dog seems to go and try and defend the young girl, and in doing so gets damaged. And the girl goes and retrieves the globe and then puts it into another robot, for want of a better word. And the robot then becomes this, and it's a much bigger robot, but it's still got the same, if you like, character of the previous one. So I think that's the Recore element of it. Don't know much more about it than that. I think it's got some interesting possibilities, but we'll just need to wait and see kind of where that goes. Yeah, Recore has come from Keiji Inafune and the Metroid Prime developers. So I think in terms of the history or of what these guys have done in terms of games, that's something to be excited about and something to be very interested in. And so I think we should look forward to having a female protagonist that might actually have some depth and definition to them. Yeah, and I think what you've got to do is kind of give a nod to Square Enix for what they did with the reboot. The reboot kind of gave you Lara Croft at the beginning of her tomb raiding, if you will, and so the Rise of the Tomb Raider is a game I'm very excited about. I think that looks like it has the potential to be an excellent game. Sure. I think you can say that the first game effectively becoming the reboot and saying this is what we're doing with this character, and here's how she became who she became. I think it was a valid approach. What for me will be very interesting is to see how they then tackle this is Lara on her first kind of real expedition, and she's there with, I think it's Jonah from the original, from the reboot, as a companion in terms of this. So, where does this take Lara? What is she there to do? Why has she done what she's done? The trailer where she's in the psychiatrist's office and appears to be very much on edge. It's like there's some real interesting possibilities what they could do with that. For me, that's why I think that the game has a lot of possibilities.
Escapism. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that, Ricky. I think that's a really good summation.